Once again, the Elliots are probably the only humans in this series that actually deserve the fate they get. How's it going, YouTube lovers? This is the Manor. Welcome back to another video where today I'm doing another Eabs book club video because today I'm reviewing the new Murder Drones graphic novel. This one is not a numbered one. This is the home special based off the episode by the same title. And this is the flashback episode we're getting into, so we get all that fun backstory with N and everything at the mansion. Once again, this is written by Wyatt Kennedy, who's been writing all of the graphic novels for this series, but this time the illustrations are by Sue Lee. So it is a different artist doing it this time, which has me really excited to see because I love art style and anything. I honestly prefer stylized stuff over hyper-realistic stuff for most things, but I'm excited to get into this because while the last issue based off of the Cabin Fever episode did still have some problems, it was probably the strongest issue yet in this series. So I'm excited to see what this one has to offer and how it handles what is honestly considered a fairly controversial episode of the series all by itself. So I'm excited to see how it goes into it. And once again, I'm going to be splitting this review into 3 sections. I'm going to talk about the just overview of the basic plot that it follows, then I'm going to talk about what I didn't like, and then I'm going to wrap it up with some positives and the changes that I thought actually worked. And before I get into this, as always, I'm going to start with a spoiler warning and an opinion warning. I'm going to be going over the plot of this, which will spoil both the graphic novel and the show, and also I'm going to be giving my personal thoughts and opinions on this as we go. So let's go ahead and jump into this review. Like all of these comics, we start with a text-formatted exchange between N and Uzi, basically just to give a recap of what happened before leading into this one. It doesn't take long, however, for us to be taken out of the present day and sent into memories of the past. After we get a glimpse of a broken drone waking up at the bottom of a big pile of drones in a junkyard, I wonder who that could be and if they could be important at all. We then are shown N in the Elliot Manor library reading a book on dogs, specifically golden retrievers, because of course he is a golden retriever after all. But while he's reading, other books start falling off of the library shelves seemingly by themselves, and they're giving him warnings, and they're prompting him to go into the creepy basement, which is right there next to him. N, however, is too smart for that. He's too smart to be a standard horror protagonist, so he just literally pieces out and says, nope, I'm not following those tropes. He leaves that room and he ends up walking into the Manor's bar room, where he finds his little sister, Sin. That's right, the silly herself with her first actual appearance here. And he has a conversation with her and she says that she wants to attend the human gala that is being held at the mansion that night. But N's like, no, the Elliots would be upset with that. We don't want to do that. But he does offer kind of a compromise. He says, okay, what? We'll talk to Tessa. Tessa, the one who created these drones, she repurposed them, rebuilt them. We'll talk to Tessa about this and we'll see what she says. But if it's still no, then hey, you and I could just have a movie night. And so Sin kind of agrees with it, but not exactly, not really. But anyway, as they go to the next room, they enter the ballroom where they find Tessa, also with Jay. So of course, Tessa and Jay hanging out there. They're pretty much best friends. But even out of the library, N is unable to get away from these strange messages that keep popping up around him. First, it was the books falling, telling him to go to the basement, and now there's marks written in the condensation of the window, telling him that if he's in trouble, he should speak aloud the name Dark X Wolf 17. Yeah, that 100% sounds like a Xbox gamer tag from 2005, and there's a reason for that. But anyway, Tessa, who built these drones, clearly doesn't want Sin to be there, but before she could get her away and send her back where she's supposed to be, Tessa's mom shows up and chastises her daughter for having the drones there and is basically getting mad because she's awful. Tessa's parents are just terrible people. They're probably some of the worst human characters I've seen in most of the indie animated shows that I've watched on this channel. There's been some pretty awful characters, but I don't know if you can get worse than Tessa's parents, honestly. But of course, talking specifically about Sin being there is a big one. She's like, I thought I told you that I want that one out of my sight. But then N steps in and says, oh no, it's all my fault. I'm the reason she's here. I'm the reason that this is all bad right now. And so Mrs. Elliot takes that as okay, fine, whatever, and has N taken out and chained to a tree outside so that he can be pecked apart by birds. If he wasn't a robot, that would be horribly graphic, but he's a robot and he's N, so it's kind of funny. But anyway, while he's there, the birds are pecking at him and they are starting to cause damage, so he calls out to Dark X Wolf 17. And it's a big like crack of thunder and lightning, and then there's another bird that appears there, a little crow. But this one has a purple glowing eye, and that glowing symbol in its eye is the solver symbol. Yes, it's purple, it's Uzi, which explains the username because she made that gamer tag when she was like 8. But it also shows that this isn't a true flashback. It is actually N's memories. And Uzi is there to help him keep those memories because some kind of internal program in his system is trying to erase them and delete them so that he doesn't have them anymore and he can't remember anything. In reality, N and V are actually just passed out on the floor of Uzi's bedroom while she's hacking into their brains to try to figure out what's going on. So all this did kind of happen this way. Obviously, Uzi wasn't there, but in reality, it's not happening right now. They're just passed out on the floor. So that's what's going on there. But anyway, while N was chained outside, things are just about to go from bad to worse inside the manor. So Tessa and Jay have been chained up in Tessa's room. Once again, the Elliots are probably the only humans in this series that actually deserve the fate they get. They chained up their own daughter. What is wrong with them? And it's clearly not the first time. And she's like rubbing her wrist from like basically a sore spot on her arm where she's been chained before. What is wrong with these people? But anyway, while Tessa and Jay are stuck in place, Sin reveals her eldritch form to them, and she promises she's not going to discard Tessa, but she also warns her to stay away from the gala because she seems like she might get a little squeamish. Then she crawls off across the outside of the building to enact her evil plan. But knowing that obviously that's bad, her family and all the guests are in danger, Tessa gets Jay to bite through the chains that are holding them in place so that they can get out of there and try to find some way to stop Sin. Meanwhile, back with our bird and robot duo, Uzi and N have made it back to the library. She says that N needs to get into the basement in order to save his memories. Like, that is what he needs to do in order to prevent this program from deleting them. He doesn't really want to, but she's insistent that he has to, so he goes up and he has to scooch an error-coded, like, currently inactive V out of the way, because she's there as a maid as well. But they can't get in. Even after moving V off the door, there is actually a lock on it, and they need to go get the key. And to make matters even worse, not only can they not get into the basement, but they hear a giggle from V, and they turn to see that her hand has mutated into a claw, and she now has a wicked, toothy smile on her face. Yeah, this whole thing's just going to keep getting worse in this manner going forward. So N and Uzi run away to go find Tessa and Jay, who the latter of which have found like a sword and a gun to use as weapons against Sin. But V, now further mutated, actually like growing fleshy wings, kind of like we saw Uzi do in the previous comic issue, drops from the ceiling to attack them. So Uzi and N take the basement key from Jay and they make a run for it while Jay is holding off V with using the sword in a big fight. N opens the door once they get back to the library, but a big claw shoots out controlled by the solver, and it crushes and throws away the bird that Uzi had been controlling. It then tries to grab N and drag him into the basement to destroy him, but Uzi is able to hack through his memories, because remember, this is still his memories, hack through it, and actually take control of the claw herself. So the two of them enter the basement, and they find the truth. Scattered around are a bunch of corpses of drones such as N, V, and J, and they are all in various stages of mutation with claws and sharp teeth and wings. Basically, Sin was experimenting on them down there over and over and over again, trying to perfect them into actual murder drones. We got our title. That doesn't say it in the comic. That's just me calling them that, but that's basically what she's doing, is turning them into basically proto versions of the disassembly drone. She was experimenting with them down there. So they've got that figured out. N knows what happened down there. Uzi's learned what happened as well, and she's about to pull him back out of his memories, but then she's interrupted by her dad in the real world, because it turns out the Doorman family has an unexpected guest. Doll. Doll has showed up, and Uzi has to log out of N's mind and just to hold off Doll because she is there to try to take the key bug that Uzi found at the camp away and take it for herself. So basically, she's left N alone down there in the memory version of his basement, and because of that, the solver retakes control of the claw that Uzi was in charge of, and it grabs N and says that it's time to reset his memories once again. Basically telling us this is not the first time that this has happened. Poor N has been through a lot dealing with the solver being in control. And it's even worse upstairs, because up on the main floor, Sin arrives at the gala. Tessa and Jay try to attack her, but the solver abilities that Sin has make it like impossible to land a hit. So she like mutates into her full form, and she tells Tessa, "You didn't have to see this. You didn't have to be here." And she mutates, takes control of all the other drones in the room, and massacres everyone in the room. Yep, this whole thing was leading up to a big massacre of all the humans in the Elliot Manor. And like I said, 2 of them deserve their fates. Just saying, it was Tessa's parents. They're horrible. But anyway, back in the real world, like I said, Doll is trying to take that key bug away from Uzi, and Uzi is trying to fight her off, but then she realizes that N and V are in trouble because of what's going on in their memories, and she needs to go back in there and help them, or those 2 are going to be lost. So she regretfully gives up the key to Doll and logs back in just in time to save N and V, because in those memories, the solver is trying to use V to help perform memory deletion on N, but N is able to get through to her, like bonding over the fact that he was reading the dog book to her earlier. So the solver's like, fine, if you're not going to help me delete your memories, I'll just erase your entire operating system. And that is when Uzi is able to log back in and save them and basically get them all back out of there, and we're good. We're out of there. Memories are safe. We're good. Not quite done yet, though, because there is still the issue of Doll, who just left with their only real big clue. Because outside, after grabbing the key bug, Doll went out and she met up with Jay and Tessa, who we saw arrive at the end of the last issue. Like I said in the last issue, this actually works really well for the pacing of the show, having that scene be at the end of there instead of at the end of the prom, so that we see the immediate result of those 2 arriving. Well done. I actually like that choice, and I stand by that, and it looks like it worked out pretty well. So Doll is there, and she gives the key bug over, and she reminds them, hey, we had a deal. You're going to take me with you because I got that for you. And to which responds, Tessa takes a shot at Doll, which Doll solver reflects, and Tessa's excuse was, oh, I was just checking. Okay, yeah. Not suspicious at all. But before they can go to wherever they were going to go and take Doll with them, they turn around to find that the other trio of Uzi, N, and V have arrived, and everyone is just surprised to see everyone else, and we get hit with a big fat to be continued once again. Honestly, this wasn't bad. It was definitely the safest issue of the comic because it really follows almost beat for beat what happens in the original episode, but considering everything else that's happened in this comic series so far, I don't think that's a bad thing. Sin, I feel like, was properly creepy already, which means she's just going to get creepier as the series goes on. And we also get a few frames that recreate the Zombie Drones VHS at the beginning to explain what we see when Sin wakes up in the junkyard. So it does a pretty good job adapting all the stuff from that episode. And I actually don't have too much to say about this comic, either good or bad overall, beyond my initial summary of it. But I did promise 3 sections, and 3 sections I shall give, because there are a couple little things to bring up here, starting with something that is actually not a story-based thing, but it's something that was kind of annoyingly noticeable for me while reading this. Again, I know this is the section of the video where I talk about what I didn't like in this comic, but I want to preface this. I love the art style that Sue Lee brings into this comic. There's a lot of use of like super thick, harsh lines, and I think that works really well for the style of the show and the style of the graphic novel. That being said, there are some detail things that my hyper-focused brain has some issues with, specifically with the drones' clothing. So all the butlers and maids in the Elliot Manor, they look pretty good. You got the suits for the butlers, like N, you got the maids in dresses. We got such as like, V and J and all the other random ones that we see around. But there are some weird mistakes with some of the main cast in their designs. Like, I could say it was stylistic, but it's just, some of them are just outright ruining some of the look of the characters. Big one is Uzi. She's completely missing the dead battery symbol on the front of her jacket. The logo that's always front and center whenever she's facing, forward in a shot. It's not there on any of those panels. It's the logo that's even featured like on merch for her. It's a huge part of her look and her design. It's the dead battery jacket and the hoodie. That is Uzi, but we don't get the dead battery there in any of the shots where she's looking forward. It's such a weird detail to miss. It's just a blank black jacket for some reason. I don't get it. And a weirder one, actually, this one's less consistent, which makes it weirder, is Doll's cheerleader outfit, because her top is just solid black for like the entire comic instead of being the red and yellow that it's supposed to be. And what makes this weirder, I said it was inconsistent. She does actually have that red and yellow color on like her sleeves and stuff in 2 panels. But in those panels, it doesn't look like she's wearing the like 2-piece cheerleader outfit that her and Lizzie wear for almost the entirety of the show. It looks like she's just wearing a super big baggy t-shirt that covers all the way down to like her knees or something. It's weird. It's just really bizarre. I don't understand it, honestly, because like if it's one thing that's like, oh, this style is just showing her with like the black top maybe for the whole thing, it's not too big a deal like Uzi's dead battery logo, that'd be fine. But it's the fact that it's inconsistent, and the fact that those 2 panels very clearly show the red and the yellow on there, but it's not the right outfit for those panels for some reason. And it's even funnier how those 2 panels are specifically from when Doll is confronting Uzi in Uzi's bedroom and trying to take the key bug from her. And I was like, oh, there must be something about that room apparently, because one panel of V in that room, she doesn't have her usual like crop top jacket that she's wearing. It looks like she's wearing Jay's jacket just without the suit and tie underneath in one frame. It's just really weird. There's some strange errors and mistakes and inconsistencies. Like, I know, it's hand-drawn art and they have to fit stuff into a little tiny comic panel, so sometimes there's sacrifices that have to be made in detail. I understand that. I'm not talking about that. It's the fact that everything is so inconsistent, or even if Uzi is taking up a huge middle part of the panel, that she's still missing a main part of her character design. And the V one is really weird, because V is the main focus of that panel, and yet it's a completely different outfit compared to what she actually wears. It's just unfortunate, that there's so many errors in how the characters look, because, like I said, the change in style is something I was really looking forward to, and I do like the way that it looks overall with the harsh lines and the coloring and stuff like that. But it almost feels like the quality control was not as good as it was for the previous issues, which I know is saying something compared to some other details that, oh, we probably should have had more quality control on there. But it almost makes it feel like maybe this issue was a little bit more rushed in being made, considering that this wasn't even part of the original plan. That's why it's not numbered. It's a home special. They originally were just going to do, 6 issues? And they're going to try to do 8 episodes in 6 issues. Because of how much money they raised in the campaign, which I contributed to, they said, oh, we're going to add a home special to adapt episode 5, and that made it so that they only had to combine 2 episodes together, which they did in issue 2 with episodes 2 and 3. But it's just really weird that they have so bad quality. Like, did they rush this? Like that's just speculation, but it almost feels like they had to oh, we don't have time to review all the details and panels. Just put it together and get it out there so that it's released after the previous issue so that it still makes sense chronologically. But yeah, it's just weird. But to be fair, my biggest complaint about this particular issue is the fact that there's character outfit inconsistencies. I'm complaining about what clothes these robots are wearing. I take that as an overall win, If that's the biggest issue I have with this, I'm actually pretty happy with it overall, and I think that's not too much of a bad thing. Because like I said, comics do have varying degrees of detail depending on the size of the panel and what the focus is and the way everything is laid out. That's always been a thing for comic books, pretty much going back to the beginning of time. So it's not too big of a deal, but it is something that, as someone who's a very detail-oriented person, I was noticing it in my brain's going, that's not right. You've seen this character 100 times. You know that's definitely not how they're supposed to look. But again, it's pretty minor thing overall. So that's a pretty good thing that my biggest issue is a minor one. And to make this even better, for the last section, of course, I want to talk about something positive. And there is a little detail here that I think actually improves the way that this story flows even more than the original episode did. The original home episode is, as I said, a controversial one for the fandom. Some people, like Yagster, absolutely hate this episode, like despise it. I personally don't have that problem with it. I actually found it like on my first watch to be one of the least confusing episodes. I don't understand why people say it was confusing, because like, yeah, no, obviously Uzi there is changing things, but it still gives you the basic idea of what happened in that backstory. And it does that well. You know about Sin, you know about Tessa, you know about the Elliots, you know that V was one of the first to be mutated, you know that they're doing that Sin was doing experiments on them. I think it gets the stuff across pretty well. But I will admit that the most confusing part about it is that setup. The fact that it's like, oh, this is a memory and Uzi is hacking into it while it's going on. They do obviously establish it. She has the dialogue there, and it's pretty much the same word-for-word dialogue that they include in the comic and the show. But this is also the last episode of the series, if we look at the original show, where there is a time skip between what's going on. Because like between episode 1 and 2, time jump. 2 and 3 in the show, time jump. 3 and 4, time jump. 4 and 5, time jump. But then after that, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all back to back to back to back. No more time jumps. Everything just flows together. So in the show, you have like, oh, it ends with the characters are on the bus, and then suddenly next episode, oh, they're passed out. Uzi is trying to protect them before their memories are erased. It does feel like a bit of a jump, like, okay, I think we missed something. Why is this happening? What is going on? But the comic actually, I think, found a way to remedy this a bit in a way that works really well. It actually fixes that main issue with setting up the plot of this story. So like I said, every comic has started with a text exchange between Uzi and N, giving like a recap of what happened previously and setting up where we're going next. While it also has, it's a lot of mainly just the humor. That's what it's been up to this point. A lot of just the sarcastic style of humor that we're used to with this series. It actually ties directly into the plot this time. During the conversation, Uzi says, oh yeah, V called me Sin at some point. Who is that? What is that about? And before N can answer the question, he starts glitching out and basically shuts down and starts talking about golden retrievers. This exchange actually gives us a version of how the events of this kick off. Uzi is asking N for more information, which is, something that frustrates me to no end in a lot of shows I've watched on this channel, where characters just don't talk to each other and just exchange information. This was actually Uzi trying to talk to N and get information from him, but the systems that the solver put into him were causing him to be unable to access that memory, and decided, oh, you're remembering too much, time to do another memory wipe. And that actually works really well. I think it's a good way to show that happening. The text exchange actually flows as part of the story. And another thing I like about that is it kind of mirrors how the episode itself started as well, because every glitch episode starts with the glitch intro that plays. I say every episode, but I think a couple of their earlier pilots don't, but every regular episode starts with the glitch intro. But for episode 5 of Murder Drones, Home, that intro starts to glitch as it reaches the end, and then it transitions into the VHS tape Zombie Drones and gives us that whole dialogue. In this right here, we have the conversation between Uzi and N, which is our intro for the comic, glitching out at the end, and then the very next thing we see, the actual, what kicks off the story of this comic after the character introductions, is the Zombie Drones VHS tape. It actually pulls double duty, this text exchange. It gives us actual relevant details about the story, about how we got to this point, and it gives a maybe unintentional, maybe not, nod to the source material and how it transitions from intro into the VHS tape. I think that actually is really cool. I thought it was a wonderful nod to it, and like I said, it pretty much addresses the biggest issue, at least what I think is the biggest issue with Home, and that is, how did we get here? I know there's always been like versions of it where fans try to figure out like, how do they go from dealing with stuff at camp to what's going on in this episode. I know that the intermission episode, fan episode that I reacted to, addressed that at one point. And I thought I did a good job there, but I think this is another really fun version of it. And again, it's not obviously not canon to the show. It's the comic version of it, but it gives us a comic canon version of what happens next, and it helps fill in probably one of the worst time jumps in the show, basically, because we feel like we go from one side all the way to the other instead of oh, we have set up, now let's follow it. I think it actually is pretty good. The text exchange was more than just a little funny exchange this time. It actually gave us relevant details and a nod to the source material, like I said, with how it transitions to the VHS. So you know what? That was a pretty good comic, in my opinion. Maybe it's just because V is barely in this particular story that Wyatt didn't have an opportunity to ruin her and make the story drag down, but this was actually a pretty solid entry in this comic series. It's probably also the most beat for beat for the show. I want to make clear, I don't want this comic to just be a beat for beat rehash of exactly what happens in the show. I want it to follow the same story, obviously, but I'm hoping that, like many people, that it would be a case to have things flow together better, which we have seen in some cases, as I brought up, or like add extra detail to something like that. But, you know, when the previous issues were so detrimental to character beats and character moments and even some of the pacing of the story, having something that is so familiar is not a bad thing. Hopefully, you know, they go back to a more solid version of adaptations going forward, but having this one be more beat for beat, which, you know, once again, maybe that's a little bit more evidence that they kind of rushed this one a little bit, is that it's barely different from the show. But either way, I think it's not a bad thing that it's beat for beat, considering what we've gotten through up to this point. So I hope hope it continues to improve, because I thought last one was decent other than the V stuff, and I thought this one was actually really solid overall, but it also was beat for beat. So I'm hoping that means that next time is going to be even better, because it is getting better. Like the second one, honestly, no, it wasn't, but 3 was better. This one was better, and next time we get the 4th issue, which is going to be adapting episode 6, which is going to be interesting. I will admit, it is probably one I'm maybe the most nervous about because of V. Because like I've said, she's been the main character that has probably been mistreated the most in this comic series, and this is a big episode for her, showing that she has changed. She makes the sacrifice play. It is such a good scene. Like, even though we know what happens afterwards as someone who has watched the show, it still hits emotionally hard because of how it plays out, because of the music done by AJ DeSpirito, the voice acting from the characters. It's a really good scene, and that is the key moment of that episode. So I'm a little bit nervous, I'll admit, considering how poorly V has been handled up to this point. But we'll just have to see what happens next time. Nothing we can do but wait and see, because they're getting better. They're getting better. This has not been as brilliant as I think we were really hoping that this, as Murder Drones fans, that we were really hoping this series was going to be, but it is getting there. It is getting there, and we are basically in the home stretch now, because like I said, there's going to be no more time skips going forward. Everything is happening in full sequence, and it is a sprint to the finish line. And we'll see. I think the next one's supposed to be coming out next month, so I'll probably do, again, another book club video the weekend after it comes out, kind of like I did for this one. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. And again, nothing we can do, but we are about halfway through this comic series now. But anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Please drop a like and a comment down below if you did. If you're subscribed, you haven't already. I'll see you all on the next one. Bye, guys!